Yo, what's going on people? It's your boy Huncho, back at you again with another video now. You know, one thing I've never really understood is when people attack vulnerable people, especially disabled people. Like, remember not too long ago, if you've been subscribed to my channel for a little while, then you'll know that I covered a story about a homeless man who was set on fire in Luton. In that case, the man wasn't disabled, but you gotta think to yourself, why do people target these individuals when realistically we should be helping them out? And when it comes to people with physical and mental disabilities, we as just human beings are supposed to show that extra care and support for them. But time and time again, we've seen these people be attacked for various reasons, but a lot of the time, believe it or not, the attacks are just completely unprovoked, and that is just like the next story we're about to get into. On the 6th of October 2019, 37-year-old martial arts enthusiast Daniel Sharples had spent his autumn morning taking Valium, drinking alcohol and eating pancakes at a pub in Warrington town centre. As he was walking under the archway on Winwick Street, he would then turn his attention to a group of people, which included 53-year-old dad of two, Michael Mairs. Michael had suffered from health conditions which included deep vein thrombosis, which ultimately led to the partial amputation of his left leg, and so he was wheelchair bound and he was reliant on his wheelchair for mobility. So after turning his attention onto the group, Daniel would burst into a fit of rage and then go on to attack the group. He attacked two members of the group and then roundhouse kicked Michael, which made him fall out of his wheelchair. After falling to the floor, he then began a vicious attack on Michael, which included punches and kicks to the head. He would then take his wheelchair and throw it. Daniel was arrested in the car park of King's Head pub a short while later via the help of witnesses, and then at this point he would be charged with 3 counts of assault, in which he went to court for and he pled guilty to. He also went on to be charged with possession of a Class B drug, which was cannabis. In that initial court hearing, it was heard that Daniel Sharples had 9 previous convictions for 25 offences, and he said that he couldn't believe how he acted out because he had taken a quantity of Valium before the attack. At this time, Michael was still in hospital where he was in a coma and was in a critical but stable condition. In court, it was said that he suffered significant swelling to the head and face, with the prosecution adding this was a sustained attack on a vulnerable man. He attacked the man, and once he fell on the floor, he continued to kick him in the head. In that initial court hearing, it was heard that after Daniel had been arrested, he went on to tell police that he attacked Michael because Michael had been selling heroin to his 15-year-old son, and he told the police, "I'm glad I did it, and I'd fucking do it again." He was due to be sentenced in November of 2019 and was denied bail at this original hearing. Around 3 weeks later, after the attack, Michael Mairs would sadly go on to die, and at this point, Daniel would then go on to be charged with wounding with intent, which was a step up from the assault charge. After an investigation by police though, in early January of this year, he would go on to be charged with the murder of Michael Mairs, which was a step up from the charge of wounding with intent. There was a court hearing held in January in regards to obviously this changing to murder, and in that hearing, it was said that the Crown Prosecution Service had to gain the consent of the Attorney General, Geoffrey Cox, in order to charge him with murder due to the previous counts that had been arranged in relation to the attack. Daniel would eventually go on to admit manslaughter, but the prosecution didn't accept a guilty verdict for manslaughter, so a trial was to go ahead, which has recently been wrapped up. In court, it was heard that Daniel admitted to killing Michael, but the prosecution said that he claims he cannot remember what happened because at the time he was wholly intoxicated by a combination of alcohol and Valium. Relaying the timeline of events to the court, it was heard that Daniel had started his day out by having pancakes for breakfast and had a pint of lager in the Looking Glass pub in Warrington. He then moved on to the Hot Pole pub, where he was said to have downed more beer and took Sambuca shots. 30 minutes after he left the Hot Pole pub, CCTV footage shows Daniel walking towards the railway bridge or the archway, where he then confronted a group of people, which included Michael and his 2 friends. The prosecution said upon reaching the group, Daniel's body language suggested that he was angry about something and then went on to attack the group. The prosecution said Daniel physically attacked 3 of the men with punches and kicks. They did nothing to provoke or incite that attack. 2 of them, Sean Taylor and Wilfred Hewitt, received minor injuries, but the 3rd man, Michael Mairs, was subjected to a particularly brutal attack involving punches and kicks to the head, some of which were captured by CCTV cameras as the operative decided to turn his camera back to the bridge. During the assault, Daniel then tipped him out of his wheelchair and then threw the wheelchair aside. It was then told that Michael had suffered serious injuries after being rushed to intensive care, but went on to die on the 28th of October 2019. The prosecution said in regards to Michael, he was not, as you will have gathered, a well man, but there is no doubt that his death had one central cause. He had quite simply been kicked and beaten to death in the street by this defendant. One witness, a homeless woman, described how Daniel had angrily came at the group, and she went on to say that he was bouncing towards them and shouting, "Where's Dan?" She added he was really aggressive and kept repeating it. She turned around to him and then went on to say, "If you're talking about Big Dan, he's dead." To that he then replied, "I'm not talking to you, you can shut the fuck up." Daniel was, she said, angry like frothing from the mouth. Another woman in the group said Daniel described them as spice heads and shouted, "I'm gonna fuck you up." It was added he was accusing Michael in particular of having sold spice to his 15-year-old son. He was pushing him and slapping him saying, "Admit it, you sold spice to my 15-year-old son." And it was also heard that he poked Michael's eyes out with his index finger. Daniel was then arrested a short while later after trying to climb over a wall in the beer garden of the King's Head pub. It was here more in-depth details would emerge of what he said to police when he was arrested. Body cam footage was played to the court where Daniel was heard telling the police, "The guy in the wheelchair, the one who sold my son smack, well, I'm never gonna go against that. I'm glad I did it and I'll fucking do it again. He's fucking nearly killed my 15-year-old son. He's in a coma and you fuckers have done nothing." But in court, it was heard that the 15-year-old son of Daniel had given a statement which states he had never taken drugs and even went as far as to say he didn't even know who Michael was. Daniel also alleged that Michael had supplied his son and stepson with spice, but both of them went on to deny that they ever took spice. After this apparent confession, the prosecution said that Daniel would then appear to backtrack on his initial admission. When this news came out, the prosecution said a little while later, perhaps realizing what he said might not be helpful, he said he wanted to take it back because he was drunk and he didn't know what he was talking about, adding, "I've not touched that guy because you shouldn't really be asking me this stuff. I'm fucked up." After an 8-day trial, Daniel Sharples was then found guilty of murder. Daniel is due to be sentenced on the 27th of October 2020, which marks near enough 1 year to the date that Michael had sadly passed away. Now, what this story shows me is once again, when people abuse alcohol and drugs, it can lead them to do irrational things like go on to kill people. Now, this guy was clearly on a drug rage and decided just to take it out on innocent people who literally had nothing to do with this whole situation because the son and the stepson's testimony does prove that Daniel was lying about that situation, and then for Daniel to go and backtrack on it just proves that point even more. Now, I do want to take this time out just to say rest in peace to Michael. This death was so unnecessary, and I do just want to send my condolences out to his family and friends. But let me know what you guys think of this in the comment section below. Give the video a little like, and if you want the latest drill, street and music news out of the UK, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's been your boy Huncho, and I'm out.